everyone, and welcome back to my channel Victoria Nicola, where I talk about literature and culture and anything else. So today I wanted to again continue the thread that I kind of started about Russian and Slavic stereotypes in literature and movies, and I wanted to mention a couple of ways that if you are writing either a film script or a book, of ways that you can actually make your characters a little more dynamic, especially if they're some form of Slavic villain. So any Slavic culture villain, particularly Russian, because oftentimes Russians are just the bad guys everywhere, and my biggest pet peeve is seeing a very one-dimensional Russian villain.
Where he's the bad guy, he's the villain, he's the mafioso, he has no heart, he's pretty miserable, and he shoots lots of vodka.
Like, that kind of villain is very stereotypical, and we don't like stereotypes here on this channel. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples of movies that did it right. A couple of movies where they take like something that's actually kind of typical, like creating a villain that's of Slavic descent, but they added a few details that made it a little less stereotypical. And I will give you my all-time favorite stereotype breaking Slavic character in American films specifically. It's actually a show, but so stay tuned for that. Okay, so the way that you can get rid of the stereotype if you are writing a Russian or Slavic villain is, one, you can add some details that might create this character a little bit more well-rounded. So for example, maybe he is a heartless person because of whatever, for reasons, but there's maybe one aspect to this character that at least is not heartless, or maybe the character super loves animals, or a particular animal. Maybe he has a bunch of pets. Maybe he loves maybe he's super environmental. Maybe he's super intelligent. Maybe he actually has a heart for a particular person. You know, he's kind to a particular demographic, or maybe there's a mom there in the picture, or some kind of intelligence level, some kind of detail that basically adds to the character and kind of takes away a little bit of that attention on the villain nature of this character. So for example, movies that did this really well is Nicolas Cage's movie Lord of War, where he plays I believe it's a Ukrainian American. He's a protagonist. He's not the villain, but he's a really bad guy because he's selling all these weapons to awful people around the world, and he's just profiting. So he's a little bit heartless, but you know his background really well and why he does the things that he does, but also he has characteristics that kind of paint him a little bit in a better light than just casting him in this shadow of darkness. So for example, he really loves his brother. He really cares for his brother. So that kind of creates better picture of him, so it's not quite so dire in his heart. Another movie that does something, again, this is not a villain, but they do take kind of a stereotypical Russian look, is the famous Bruce Willis Armageddon movie and Ben Affleck. There's an astronaut that's a cosmonaut who's on the space station, and when the Bruce Willis's team, I forget I think it was Bruce Willis, they get to the space station, they meet this like kind of loony cosmonaut. And again, that is a very typical role for a Russian to play in an American film, where they're just
A little loony, a little crazy, they have that accent.
You know, they're that kind of crazy character, and he's obviously not a bad guy. He's an intelligent enough cosmonaut to be on the station, and that's the detail that kind of gives him a character. Like if they just had this character somewhere on the street, then it's like, oh my gosh, again, the stereotypical nature of the literature world, and casting all Russians in either the villainous role or the cuckoo bananas character role. But because he's obviously intelligent enough to be a cosmonaut, he kind of has that detail to him. And the fact that he's kooky is actually just an eccentricity, as opposed to like, that's the only thing that there is to him. So that's another movie that does it really well. And another way you could create a villain but get rid of the stereotype is, at the very least, create a background story to why this person is the way they are. Why are they heartless? Why are they drinking a bunch of alcohol? Are they trying to forget some kind of childhood trauma? For example, a movie that does this well is The Men from U.N.C.L.E. I actually really like the character that Armie Hammer plays. He's the Russian, that typical Russian communist spy
Who does not smile, and he has that stereotype.
and he starts really distant and cold, but he eventually the audience really warms up to him because he does actually have a heart, that's a detail, and he kind of has a little bit of a love story happening with the female character, and you kind of know his background is really harsh. He comes from a really hard childhood, a very disciplined upbringing, and all that. And so you don't know too much about his background. It's not like they dive deeply into it, but he's a human character. He's well-rounded and well-versed, and you actually understand a lot of his motives and emotions, even though he is portrayed as the more serious, kind of distant, cold figure compared to the American character in that movie, which I love that movie. I love the characters. I love the way they portrayed everybody. It's one of my favorites, actually. So that is a movie that does Russian characters well. And then the other movie that is another Soviet kind of era, I mean, it's not a Soviet era, but it plays on the Soviet era, is The Americans. Obviously, these characters, they're not villains. They are the protagonists, but they are gray characters. They're spying on the country that you're watching them from, right? They're spying on America, and you're in America watching this show. But I think the way they do it is they do portray a lot of the background. You really get to understand these characters, and you understand the secondary characters. It's not just the primary characters and then that's it, and everyone else is the stereotype. What I really like about it is they do get into a lot of the other backgrounds of a lot of the secondary characters, and I just feel like they did such a good job portraying their ups and downs, their aches and pains, and the tragedies of their lives. And it's still very, very well done, even though they are exploring a very overplayed, I should say, and overused type of Russian time, right? They're talking about this, not just the Soviet times, because that was like a 70-year period. No, they're talking about government spies from the Soviet Union. So it's like kind of overplayed, but they do it really, really well. So that's another movie, I should say show, that I really like. And my very favorite show recently that I really, really liked, that does use a Russian character, but what's so refreshing about this show is that they don't really do any of the stereotypes. This character doesn't drink, they're not a bad guy, it's just a detail about this character. Clearly they're Russian American, so the show is called Russian Doll. And why I like it is because she just happens to be Russian American. Her name is Nadia, and that's it. And then they go into her story, which is this really crazy experience where she dies and comes back, and she has to figure out. It's obviously magical realism or fantasy, however you want to call it. It's very mystical, right? So the story that she is Russian is just kind of like a little detail to her character, but it's not the main thing. It's not what's being focused on. And I really like that. I wish we had more of that, because I think when you just say, oh, well, the details are they do come from Russia, but actually that's not what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on this other crazy thing that happened to them. I think that's where it's very refreshing. And she doesn't have a crazy Russian accent. She's not, you know, like none of those details. She's not this crazy femme fatale. She's just a normal person who's going through this crazy experience. And I really like that. If anything, the only thing that I would add to that, I wish when they did explore her background, where they touched upon her difficulty with her mom, because her mom happened to have some mental issues. And I wish they kind of actually explained a little bit more. Was it her mother who that came from the Soviet Union? Was Nadia herself born? Like, I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of that, just to like understand a little more of the family history, but it's okay that we didn't, because they clearly made it so that you didn't focus so much on those details. They just wanted it to be about her experience of dying and coming back, dying and coming back. So it's a very well done show in many respects, but the one respect that I really loved is this refreshing perspective of a Russian character who's not a stereotype, essentially. So that's it, you guys. Do you have any other ideas of what could potentially help expand a Russian or a Slavic character in literature or film? If you do, write down the ideas down in the comments below. Please subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.